Ma'am, may I ask one more question, Madam Chairman?
Go
Chairwoman.
ahead. Go ahead.
It can't, in the course of the answering the questions about ceilings and floors, I came up with another question. So you're a homeowner, but you also own a rental house. So your rental house would have that 8% a year cap. Is that right? So you may be able to charge more for your rental house, but maybe not. But your taxes would continue to go up at some rate.
Well, again, Russell, that under the rental provisions for single-family owner-occupied homes, if you're renting the property at or below the HUD rates that are in the statutory provisions, then you would be eligible for the 3% abatement factor. But if you're not, then you would be subject to the abatement factor for just like all the other non-single family owner-occupied. So then you would be between the 3% and the 8% cap factors.
So if you'd like to submit an actual written question to get a written answer, that would be, we would be willing to do that.
Okay, maybe that's what I should do.
Thanks.
But thank you.
So seeing no one else, is there anyone else signed in Las Vegas? So is there anyone signed in opposition in Carson City? Mr. Fontaine, could you come back to the table, please? Can you go ahead and do your, if you have any final comments or wrap-up statements? We had a question from a member, but she's not here.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I think we can all agree on one thing, and that is our property tax formula is very difficult to understand, if nothing else. And I'm wondering if at least some of those folks who expressed opposition to this bill, at least judging by the questions, and hopefully the answers to those questions have a better understanding of what this bill does and doesn't do. So let me just clarify a couple of things. And your staff, Mr. Guinan, did an excellent job, but I just want to emphasize that this bill does not remove the 3% cap or 8% cap. It does not mean that property taxes for owner-occupied residences would automatically increase by 3%. They would only do so. That remains the way it would be in existing law. So if your property value, as assessed by your county assessor, did not increase by 3% or more, and you didn't have some abatement from prior years, then your property tax bill would not increase by 3%. So that's not an automatic. This is about stability. This is about fixing a broken system. And this is not, again, about creating a windfall by getting new revenue for counties or other local governments. This is about reducing an abatement that today is a savings to all taxpayers. And today it's $700 million, and that's growing. So while I certainly appreciate and recognize that folks who are on fixed incomes and they move to Las Vegas or they move to Nevada because of low property taxes, I can't imagine that this bill would affect our standing in terms of favorable tax property tax rates in this state relative to other states in the country. I'm not sure I know what else to say except that there is a bigger discussion about property taxes, and there have been suggestions about possibly doing something else with this bill. That was never our intent. We certainly understand how difficult this issue is to talk about. We're just trying to make one small incremental step towards correcting a system that we know needs to be corrected. And so it is a step in the right direction, and we would urge your support of this bill, and if there are any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Assemblywoman Bustamante Adams.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Fontaine, so obviously there's a lot of confusion about the difference between the commerce tax and a property tax, and the difference between residential and commercial property tax. And so have you guys had communication on a communication plan for Nevadans if this goes forward? Because I don't know if that's in your conversations. And not to put it so technical, because I'm not sure if I could explain it to my mom.
Madam Chair, to you and through you to Assemblywoman Bustamante Adams. We knew this was going to be a very difficult conversation. Believe me, even amongst the people who work in this arena, it's very difficult sometimes to understand. So your point is well taken, and we certainly learned a lot in this hearing about why we would need to do that, put together a communications plan, and explain maybe in some schematic or some logic chart or whatever it is that we need to do to make this clear. You know, if you stopped, you know, 1,000 taxpayers on the street and asked them why their property taxes were what they were this year, I can't imagine that one of them would understand it. I mean, quite frankly, part of what we're trying to do here is to simplify how all of this works, because I think most people would think that their property tax bill is going to increase by 3%. And you heard at least one of the folks who testified, I think it was Mr. Allen, that's what everybody thought it was, and that's what everybody, when the caps were put into place back in 2005, that's what everybody agreed to. This secondary calculation has really complicated all of that. If it were simply a matter of a 3% cap and an 8% cap, people get that. So, you know, your point's well taken, and we would certainly endeavor to work with folks to help us put together that kind of communication plan.
Okay, so there's Assemblywoman Cohen.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so no one's tax bill's going up until their home value goes up more from where we're at now, correct? That's what we're saying. Sure.
Madam Chair, to you and through you to Assemblywoman Cohen, at least you didn't ask me about the 3%, whether that was a floor or a ceiling. So thank you for not asking that question. No one's tax bill will go up next year. I can say that with certainty. Beyond that, the projections are that no one's tax bill would go up until, well, at least through 2022. And again, that's based on the projections of where the CPI would otherwise be. Beyond that, I can't predict the future.
Sorry,
So
I forgot that from the beginning of the hearing.
I hope that answered your question.
Okay, and that we're going back to information we're all getting from the county assessor. Everyone's individual county assessor is dealing with home values.
Okay. If I may, Madam Chair.
I'm trying to understand the question.
I guess my point that I'm trying to make is people's homes are going to be assessed at values coming from the individual assessors from their individual counties, not decisions being made in Carson City, is the point that I guess I want to make sure, I'd like to have you confirm.
Okay. Madam Chair, to you and through you to Assemblywoman Cohen, that is absolutely correct. There's nothing in this bill that would change the way the county assessor assesses your property. There's nothing in this bill that would change the tax rate or depreciation factor or anything else. And that's why, you know, those who came and testified in support of this bill indicated that this really is a very small step. You know, this doesn't do anything other than set the floor eventually at 3% so that we don't have this artificially, I shouldn't say artificially, but this unintended consequence result in property tax revenues going down to 0.2 like they were this year.
Thank you.
Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson.
Thank you so much. So just to clarify what you said, and there's been all this clarification, but it's great. So when you said people's tax bills won't go up next year, they do go up, but they go up under the status quo. What you meant is that without this language were to be passed, then it starts to take effect the year afterwards. But there's going to be a small increase in property taxes next year, and I believe that's the number that was first referenced by our first trio of opposition. It's in talking about that it's going to be the 2.6 CPI for the 2018 calculations, but that's not as a result of this bill and this change. That's just what's going to happen in the status quo. And then I guess, are you going to stand open for suggestions about how to market this? Interpretive dance, a musical, a flat 3, yay for me. I mean, I could come up with a ton to help you out. Just ready to go.
Please don't answer that. I'm almost positive that any additional dialogue will just be a problem. So just to simply wrap this up, try to clean this up, everybody walks away with a non-Greek thought in their mind. All this bill, AB43, the amendment, does is stabilize the property tax so that when we kept seeing all of these dips over a period of time, we are leveling out and we're going to see a stable flow, and it'll be at 3%. That will be the floor, that will be the ceiling, no adjustments. It's kind of like everybody gets to walk forward. They don't get to see a negative drop, which is what we saw in the past, and that we're actually just providing stability so we can plan around our needs, our goals. We may not get growth, but we will get stability. Would that be an accurate assessment of what AB 43 amendment does?
Madam Chair, I think you summarized very well. I would just add one sort of caveat or condition, I should say, to that. The dips in the property tax revenues that you referred to have happened twice. Well, they've happened once this year, and they will happen again next year. It's a rare occurrence. This isn't a cyclical thing where since 2005 we've seen dips. But not because of the secondary calculation. What this bill does is prevents a rare occurrence from ever happening again where it will result in property tax revenues below 3%.